however, in the book of Exodus, in chapter 4, verse 7. Now this is Moses, okay? I'm going to start in verse 6. Moses took half of the blood and put it in the basins, and the other half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient. Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, so he read it. He read it to them. And guess what? Because they were in agreement, they had ears to hear. They listened. They didn't just shut it down and say, talk to the hand, that's not important. I don't need counsel. Just talk to the they didn't do that, which we see all too much of that today because we're not taught to read. We don't know how to comprehend. We're taught to scroll. And there's no comprehension in scrolling, which I'm going to cover that too. So here, when it says he read it in the hearing of the people, and they all said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient. Okay, guess what? If you can read and you are a believer, and you don't know what the word reads, it's not going to go well for you on that judgment day for you. Why? Because the Lord can ask you a simple question, and if you don't know, he can ask you, well, did you read it? And you're going to say, and then he might say, away from me, I never knew you. But that's a big problem, see. So Moses read, the people had ears to hear because they didn't have ADD, ADHD, and all these other things that are spiritual issues. They didn't have all of the food that causes all the other ailments. They had an attention span that was greater than what we see today. So then we move to the book of, let me take you to Joshua, and it is Joshua 8:34. Then afterward, okay, but I'm going to start in verse 33 so you get who's there. All Israel with their elders and officers and their judges were standing on both sides of the ark before the Levitical priest who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, the stranger as well as the native. Half of them stood in front of Mount Gerizim and half of them stood in front of Mount Ebal, just as Moses the servant of the Lord had given command at the first to bless the people of Israel. Then afterward, he read all the words of the law, the blessings and the curses. That's Deuteronomy 28:27. You really need to read those because guess what? Contract law, right there. It's all in the contract. Okay, according to all that is written in the book of the law. And so there was not a word of all that Moses has commanded, which Joshua did not read before the assembly of Israel with the women and the little ones and the strangers who were living among them. He read every single word. Why? Because it matters. Okay? So there's a difference between words and the meaning of them. What do I mean by this? Well, there's a difference if you are a citizen in the United States and a citizen of the United States. Just because you are in the United States does not mean you are of the United States. Two different things, two very different meanings. The two-letter words change the entire thing. So if you're only looking for a main point, you're falling into exactly what they want, which means you have no comprehension at all. How do we know this? Well, I'm so glad you asked, and I've got all kinds of stuff on my glasses. So, here's the catch. It's all a trap. In the Old Testament and then in the New Testament, we are told to read. Now, let me tell you what's so fascinating to me about this. When I learned how to read, and I had in school reading comprehension and many things related to reading, and back then it was different than what we have today in schools, but there were quizzes based upon reading comprehension and you had to read. And when I really learned how to read, I started reading the Bible different, number one, and then when I purchased a vehicle guess what happened? Whenever you purchase a vehicle, if you pay in cash or if you finance, they stick you in that room with the high pressure person that wants to sit behind the desk and tell you where to sign. Here's the thing. You always need to sign after you've read it, okay? And they'll kind of do all their sighing to push you along. That's a tactic. You need to learn how to read all of it. Here's what I read in the particular contract, and this is something that you would never know if you don't read it. Number one is that in the state of Texas at that particular time, that you did not have the right to sell the vehicle without their written consent, which would be the finance company. So if you wanted to sell the vehicle, you had to have their permission. Most people would never know that. And then number two is this. If you purchase the vehicle and then you drive it off the lot and something happens where that loan is not fulfilled, every mile you drive, you have to pay back. Oh, and then there's a fee on top of each mile that they charge you for. You wouldn't know that. So they were not happy when I said, I can leave the vehicle until we fully know that the vehicle has gone through every single thing that it needs to go through. So not an issue. Let me know when it's done. And of course, they didn't like that because they couldn't mark it off as finished if the vehicle's still on the lot, which was another clause in the contract, see. So when you learn how to read, you are armed with things that you would not otherwise be.